Hey there, friends. I hope you're doing well. I'm Laura, aka Weird Barbie, and if you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Either way, I'm really glad you're here. I make slow, cozy MMO content from a neurodivergent perspective every week. This video is about my first 50 hours in Guild Wars 1, my first impressions of the overall vibes this game is throwing down. If you're familiar with my channel, you know I've recently spent a lot of time in Final Fantasy XI, and after hundreds of hours in a game that actively refuses to explain itself, jumping into Guild Wars 1 was honestly kind of a shock to my system, but in a good way. I should also mention that in the past I've spent a few months playing Guild Wars 2 as well, and I did enjoy my time with it, but it just wasn't the MMO for me. So coming into Guild Wars 1, I wasn't completely unfamiliar with the world, but the way this game approaches systems, pacing, and player choice feels very different, and that contrast has been fascinating to experience. This isn't going to be a full review or a comparison video, though I might make a couple gentle comparisons to other games where systems do overlap because my brain can't help itself, and I hope you'll forgive me for that. Now, before we jump into the video, I am so pleased to announce that I'm co-hosting a new podcast with the endlessly talented Embers Arcade. The Campfire, a gaming podcast, is your weekly source for gaming discussions and industry analysis by two MMO-obsessed YouTubers. The Campfire is on Patreon, and for as low as $1 per month, you get access to our Game of the Month Club, which is our exclusive communal gaming series. Our game this month is, surprise, surprise, Guild Wars 1. You also get access to a private Discord channel and the chance to get your inquiries and comments read during an episode. More perks are included too, like early episodes, producer credits, and more depending on the tier you choose. I'll link both the podcast, the Patreon, and Ember's channel in the description below. Episode 1 is out now, so go check it out. With that big news out of the way, grab a tea, your favorite hoodie, maybe pet your cat if one is nearby, and let's dive in. First off, I want to get a small technicality out of the way. Guild Wars 1 isn't technically an MMORPG, it's an MORPG. In a traditional MMORPG, the world itself is persistent and shared. You're running around in the same overworld as dozens or even hundreds of other players at all times. You see them questing, fighting, gathering. Everything happens in a single continuous space. Guild Wars 1 works differently. Most of the world is instanced. When you leave a town or outpost, the game spins up a private version of that area just for you and your party, whether that party is other players, henchmen, or heroes. Cities and hubs are where you see everyone else. That technical distinction is what drops them massively from MMORPG and turns it into an MORPG. But for me, it still feels like an MMO, which is why I'm covering it on this channel. I'm used to playing MMOs solo. I'm used to relying on NPC companions, trusts in Final Fantasy XI, for example. And I'm used to seeing other players mainly in social spaces, like cities, not constantly out in the field. That's exactly the same rhythm that Guild Wars 1 gives me. I get the sense of a living world, the social presence in towns, the option to group when I want to, without the pressure of always being visible, always being efficient, or always competing for space and resources. So yes, technically it's an MORPG, but in practice, it scratches the same itch as an MMO, and for the way I play, it might even do it better than some games officially in that genre do. With that out of the way, let's talk setup. I mean, what setup? This game is wash and wear, plug and play. Coming off of installing Final Fantasy XI, installing Guild Wars 1 felt like a blessed relief. And I don't say that lightly. If you've ever installed Final Fantasy XI, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The Play Online launcher, the emails and accounts and passwords, the configuration hurdles. By comparison, Guild Wars 1 was painless. I installed it, launched it, and I was just playing a minute later. No fighting, no satanic rituals, just in. That alone set a nice comfortable tone for how the rest of this playthrough would feel. One of the first things that stood out to me once I got my character made was how intuitive Guild Wars 1 feels on the Steam Deck. The game shows button glyphs everywhere. Menus, abilities, interactions, like it constantly reminds your hands what they're supposed to be doing. And the tutorial does a fantastic job easing you into both movement and combat without overwhelming you. If you're familiar with Final Fantasy XIV on controller like me, then Guild Wars 1 is going to feel immediately comfortable. And once I mapped the back buttons on my Steam Deck to things like inventory, quest log, closing windows, and attributes windows, it honestly felt better than a standard controller setup. As an aside, I can't wait for the Steam Machine and Steam Controller to launch in the spring, because having a controller with Steam Deck back buttons on it that allows me to play docked without losing handheld functionality is going to be a dream come true for me. I love my DualShock 4 controller, don't get me wrong, but it is going out the window as soon as that Steam Controller shows up, baby, because I need those extra back buttons. So, I originally chose to start in the Nightfall campaign, rather than in Prophecies, which is what everyone was suggesting. I will pay for this hubris, don't worry. My reasoning for doing this, though, was fairly simple. I want to play solo, and Nightfall gives you heroes, so that sounded perfect. Oh, it was not perfect. I also rolled a Necromancer because the internet told me it was good for solo play, and also because minion summoning and lifesteal will never not be cool and absurdly OP. And at first, I was having a great time. Completing my first Nightfall mission struck a really nice balance. The game uses quest markers to get you moving, but it doesn't spoon feed you everything about the quest. For example, I needed oil to arm catapults, and while the game told me what I needed, it didn't show me where it was on the map. I had to read the dialogue, I had to pay attention, I had to problem solve. And when I finally figured it out, it felt genuinely rewarding. That said, Nightfall eventually overwhelmed me. I hit my first real roadblock when I realized I had no idea where to go next after my first mission. NPCs were handing out quests like candy on Halloween, and unlike earlier missions, there was no clear hints or tooltips telling me where to start or what order to do things in. I was trapped in analysis paralysis almost immediately. And I'll be honest, I quit that first session right there. But I knew one thing: the internet exists. The next day, Google gently informed me that if I was feeling overwhelmed, I should probably do what it suggested in the first place and start in the Prophecies campaign instead. It's slower paced, more structured, has a deeper tutorial, basically all the things that I needed. Losing access to heroes kinda bummed me out, but the temptation of not being lost and overwhelmed was too strong. So I deleted that first character so I could reuse the name and re-rolled in Prophecies. I made myself a sexy blonde ranger and dove back in with no regrets. When I finally reached Ascalon, I was genuinely surprised by how many other players I saw. That immediately made me curious about population numbers. According to Google, Guild Wars 1 averages about 2,000 daily players on Steam, with a recent all-time high of around 5,600 players in a single day thanks to the Reforged launch in 2025. And since a lot of longtime players still use the ArenaNet launcher instead of Steam, estimates across all platforms put the monthly player count somewhere between 15 and 30,000 players. The Reforged relaunch alone caused an over 800% increase in player activity, which is honestly incredible for a game this old. What's even more comforting is that the developers have openly said that server costs for Guild Wars 1 are minimal, and that as long as Guild Wars 2 is still up and running, they plan to keep Guild Wars 1 online as well. So this doesn't feel like a game that's quietly waiting to be shut down, and if you haven't enjoyed it yet and have been waiting to take that leap because you thought, oh, it's an old game and they're going to shut it down soon probably, so what's the point in investing? You don't have to feel like that. You can jump right in. Feels like a game that's being lovingly kept alive and still actively enjoyed, not something on its deathbed. The moment I entered my first pre-steering mission, something became very clear. Enemy difficulty in this game is absolutely designed for groups. The enemies I faced in Nightfall felt almost absurdly easy by comparison because in Nightfall you start out with a full party of henchmen and heroes. In Prophecies, combat was tougher right out of the gate, especially solo. I could handle a couple enemies, but pulling more than 2 or 3 felt dangerous. We'll see how long soloing lasts before I'm forced to recruit henchmen. That said, I love how quickly health regenerates outside of combat in this game. It keeps the pacing smooth and forgiving without removing the stakes. Besides quality of life features, one thing I've been having a lot of fun with in Guild Wars 1 is goal setting, specifically how I'm approaching the pre-searing missions. For those that don't know, Prophecies is divided into pre- and post-searing sections, and there are certain things you can't do anywhere but the pre-searing. I'm treating it a bit like a one-chunk challenge in old school RuneScape, which is something I really enjoy. For those that aren't familiar, that's when you try to complete a specific section or chunk of content before moving to a new one, maximizing efficiency under limiting conditions and seeing how much you can accomplish before unlocking a death chunk and giving up forever. It's challenging, satisfying, and gives me a sense of progression all at once. In Guild Wars 1, my one chunk challenge is trying to complete every side quest, reach level 20, and earn the rare title of Legendary Defender of Ascalon, all in the pre-searing area. It's been a really fun way to structure my play. I can tackle combat, exploration, and questing all at once, and it gives me clear milestones to aim for while still letting me enjoy the freedom of the game. I don't know if I'll actually complete this challenge, but it's fun to try nonetheless. I'll keep you updated. I love that I can measure progress through side quests completed, skills learned, and milestones earned like titles, instead of just chasing gear or raw stats. It makes each session feel meaningful, and it adds this layer of personal challenge that keeps me engaged without feeling stressful. It's silly maybe, but for my ADHD brain, combining goal setting, side objectives, and exploration makes the game feel really alive and incredibly satisfying. Moving on, I assumed missions would only have a single main objective, so I was pleasantly surprised to find side quests and bonus objectives inside mission zones. After helping some random guy gather bug eggs, as one does, I completed my first major mission objective, returned to town, and sold off everything I couldn't use. I did find a nice longbow, but the rest was vendor trash. Or at least I assumed it was. I wasn't sure what else to do with it. Guild Wars 1's crafting system is another unexpected win for me. Instead of leveling crafting professions, you use salvage kits to break items down into materials, then take those materials to NPC crafters. There's no crafting grind, no gathering grind, no parallel progression anxiety. I genuinely enjoy this system. Managing combat progression alone is enough for my brain. I don't need another skill tree looming over me making me feel inefficient. Besides, if I want to train crafting and gathering skills and feel inefficient, I've got old school RuneScape to scratch that itch, and it does it better than just about any other game out there. Coming from Final Fantasy XI, things like health regenerating after combat, having a mini-map, and hoverable tooltips felt luxurious in Guild Wars 1. I don't want to compare the two games too much because they're very different genres, but where systems overlap, I'm going to notice. After spending hundreds of hours in a game with no quest markers, no minimap, and limited solo ability, Guild Wars 1 felt like my brain could finally breathe. I felt informed. I felt confident. I felt like I understood what I was doing while I was doing it, instead of constantly stopping to watch videos or read wikis just to function. Not that I don't like this about Final Fantasy XI, and I do, but playing Final Fantasy XI has permanently changed how I appreciate systems in other games, and I'm really grateful for that. Hopping over to atmosphere, visuals, and that music for a second, I gotta say, for a 20-year-old game, Guild Wars 1 looks and sounds beautiful. And the music? I didn't even need to look it up to know who composed it. Those flutes, those violins, that sweeping atmosphere, I knew instantly this was the work of Jeremy Soule. If that name sounds familiar, it's because he gave us the music for Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, Knights of the Old Republic, Neverwinter Nights, Guild Wars 2, and even the first 4 Harry Potter movie tie-in games. Listening to Guild Wars 1 feels like walking through Coral, Whiterun, or Lion's Arch in an alternate universe. I played the game for a few hours, completed my ranger quests, and got Drew, my Melandru stalker pet, and eventually picked up my second profession, necromancer. I completed the starter quests, died a few times, and spent an embarrassing amount of time wondering why I couldn't summon bone minions. Turns out, you need a corpse nearby. Duh. Once it clicked, though, everything started to fall into place. This two-job system ended up being one I really loved in Guild Wars 1. And yes, this is one of those moments where my Final Fantasy XI brain lit up because it scratched the same deeply satisfying sub-job itch. In my case, I started as a ranger and then picked up necromancer as my secondary profession. And on paper, that combo sounded perfect to me. Range damage, pets, lifesteal, minions, lots of little tools that let me play thoughtfully instead of aggressively. But Guild Wars 1 makes you earn that flexibility by demonstrating decision-making skills. You only get 8 skill slots on your hotbar. That's it. At first, this felt kind of limiting, especially when I realized just how many skills that I suddenly had access to. Coming from Final Fantasy XIV, where hotbars can stretch on into eternity, this was a shock. But the more I played, the more I realized the point. Those 8 slots force you to make intentional choices. I couldn't bring every pet skill, every lifesteal option, or every condition or utility ability I wanted. I had to decide what the character actually needed right then and there to achieve the objective. Do I want more survivability or more damage? Do I bring minion skills knowing I need corpses nearby? Do I lean into the ranger's damage skills or the necromancer's sustain skills? Building my ranger necromancer loadout became a puzzle I solved before combat even started, and that made fights feel more thoughtful instead of reactive. It scratches the same itch as Final Fantasy XI's sub-job system, that feeling of crafting a character identity through preparation rather than button mashing. And for my ADHD brain, that constraint is honestly a blessing. 8 slots is more than enough to feel expressive, but not so many that I get overwhelmed or lost. If something doesn't work, I can step back, rethink my build, swap a few skills, and try again. This is also where I want to talk for a second about analysis paralysis. Analysis paralysis is what happens when you're given too many choices with too little clarity, and instead of making a decision, your brain just freezes. Not because you don't care, but because every option feels like it might be the wrong one, so you choose none of them. For people with ADHD, this happens a lot. Our brains are really good at seeing all the possibilities at once. Every outcome, every what if, every way something could go sideways. And when there's no obvious best choice, or when choices feel too permanent or punishing, it can make doing anything feel completely overwhelming to the point that you shut down. What Guild Wars 1 does really well is give you constraints with safety. Yes, there are a ton of skills. Yes, choosing which 8 to bring can feel intimidating at first, but nothing about that choice is permanent. You're not locked in. You're not punished for experimenting. If my Ranger Necromancer build doesn't work, I don't fail as a player. I just learn something and try something new. I can change my skills. I can rethink my approach. I can try again. And over time, that teaches a really important lesson. You don't need the perfect decision, you just need to make a decision. Guild Wars 1 quietly trains you to trust yourself, to make a choice, see how it feels, and adjust from there. That loop of decide, test, reflect is incredibly healthy for an ADHD brain. Instead of spiraling in menus, I learned to move forward. And that lesson has carried over into how I approach other games, and sometimes even my life outside of them. One last thing that really stood out to me in Guild Wars 1 is how it handles progression. It's primarily horizontal, not vertical like a lot of MMOs we're used to. In games like World of Warcraft, character power is usually measured in big numbers. Higher level gear, bigger stats, higher damage output. But in Guild Wars 1, your growth isn't about chasing bigger numbers. Once you hit the level cap of 20 and max out your early armor and weapon stats, which by the way can happen surprisingly fast, the way you get stronger is very different. Your power comes from skills, combos, and player knowledge. Which skills you pick, how you combine them in your builds, how you utilize heroes and henchmen, that's what makes a character effective. Gear is still relevant, and so are stats, but they don't overshadow strategy. The armor and weapons you get early on can stay useful for a very long time, because new expansions don't just replace them with gear with bigger stats. New content in Guild Wars 1 adds variety, not just raw numbers. Elite skills, new professions, and different mission mechanics give you more options for creative builds instead of making old skills obsolete. It's less about out-leveling content and more about mastering it in smarter, more interesting ways. The endgame really drives this home from what I've heard. Instead of grinding for slightly better gear, you focus on things like achievement hunting, collecting rare skins, maximizing titles, and tackling challenging areas like Underworld or Fane of the Whispers, which require carefully thought out builds and strategy. Success comes from understanding the game, experimenting, and planning, rather than just having the highest stats. What makes this horizontal progression even more enjoyable is that Guild Wars 1 is subscription free. After spending hundreds of hours in games like Final Fantasy XI, Final Fantasy XIV, etc., where monthly fees are part of the experience, it's refreshing to know I can just log into a game, play, take as many breaks as I want, and come back whenever I want, all without worrying about recurring payments or falling behind. For me, the progression style has been really refreshing. It makes every new skill feel meaningful, and it rewards curiosity, experimentation, and planning in a way that just feels satisfying. Guild Wars 1 has become the perfect game for me to bounce between while continuing my journey through Final Fantasy XI and my old school RuneScape One Chunk account. The first video in that series is well underway and should be coming out after this video. If not this video, then probably the next one. When one starts to exhaust me, the other refreshes my brain completely. They're different enough in quality of life features, in the skills and brain power I need to use, and in pacing, that switching between them feels genuinely energizing. I hop between game genres all the time for this exact reason. That and my brain kind of demands it. So yeah, after my first 50 hours, I can confidently say Guild Wars 1 feels special and unique. Even though it was released 20 years ago, it still holds up today. It still has a relatively active player base, and its PvP scene has an impressive legacy. In fact, it was an official esport for a few years. Qualifying rounds for these tournaments were held online across North America, Europe, and Korea, with the top teams flown out to compete in offline LAN finals for significant cash prizes totaling around $100,000 US. Exploring this side of the game has given me a fascinating window into gaming history, led me down a few enjoyable rabbit holes, and made me appreciate just how influential Guild Wars 1 has been. I'm really glad I finally gave it the time it deserves, and I absolutely plan to play more. My next stretch of time with the game, I want to experiment more with professions and builds. Spend time learning party composition once henchmen and heroes become more central, and explore more of the world at my own pace, without rushing myself to catch up to anything. If you found this video helpful or entertaining, consider liking or subscribing. Or heck, do both. They're fat-free, keto-friendly, and other buzzwords too. When you subscribe, you get a weekly MMO video from a neurodivergent perspective to enjoy while you're enjoying other things like washing dishes or playing games or working out. I try to approach these games slowly, thoughtfully, and without the pressure to play them correctly. Along the way, I like to share informative mental health diatribes, self-care tips, life lessons, or insights I've learned in therapy in regards to gaming. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. How long did it take you to feel comfortable in Guild Wars 1? What was the moment where things finally clicked? If you're new to the game, there are so many incredible resources out there. The wiki, veteran guides, and longtime community posts that are still incredibly relevant. Be sure to check out Ember's channel and our new podcast, you guys. Episode 1 just dropped, so go check it out. And if you still haven't had enough of me after that, you can check out my Discord and join the community there. We talk about MMOs, gaming, and trashy memes. Only the finest for you guys. That's all from me today. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, stay weird, stay cozy, and keep leveling.